Hello everyone, my name is Pacha and welcome back to another episode of Tiergarten Edelwald. And is it only me or do these 2 weeks between episodes feel longer every time? I don't know. I'm still very much sorry that it has to be that way at the moment, but my real life work is super stressful at the moment and doesn't really allow me to spend much time on recording, processing and doing all the stuff for a new video. So I'm hopeful that it will be over soon. It should be over in 3 to 4 weeks if everything works out the way I plan to, but I'm just happy we will get back to a normal video schedule after that. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And I'm still sorry that it has to be the way, as I said, but it's nothing we can do about. But yeah, we are not here to contemplate about the problems that I have with my work schedule at the moment, but to talk about today's build, and that will be the last 2 areas for our little Australian area that we started 4 weeks ago, almost a month ago, and today we're gonna work, as you already saw from the thumbnail and the intro cinematic, on the common wombat exhibit that I talked about in the last episode, as well as the zoo lab / zoo school building, which I also already mentioned in last week's episode, which will also close up finally the red kangaroo exhibit. And if you watched last week's episode, then you know that I had the idea in my mind to make the wallaby, the wombat, and the kangaroo exhibit one continuous exhibit, because that is how it is in the Rhea Zoo of Copenhagen, where the where the wallabies in that case can actually go into the wombat exhibit, but the wombats can't leave their little ditch that they have here, the little hole. And I wasn't really sure if I will will be able to manage that because of hitboxes, because of traversability, and all that things that blocks sometimes the creativity in this game, which is a shame. And hopefully in a sequel they will address that. But I can now say that I managed to make it work so that the red kangaroos can actually get into the wombat exhibit, because it is one entire exhibit, and the wombat itself can't get out, based on how I made the entrance for the keeper. The keeper can still get into the wombat exhibit because they have a smaller hitbox, but the wombats have a ever so slightly larger hitbox, and I managed to make the entrance thin enough, basically narrow enough, to let the keepers in, but not the wombats out. The kangaroos can jump over these ledges over here that we are now covering up with some mulch to hide the terrain that goes down. They can get in and out of that. They can jump in and out of that, which is very cool. So I managed to do it, which I'm very happy about it. You probably maybe saw in the cinematic. I record the cinematics always after the recording, the voiceover, so maybe I managed to show that in the cinematic. If not, you will most likely see it on screenshots and things like that I will post on all social media accounts. And I'm very happy about it. I'm really happy about it that it worked out. The trick is what we're building here, this entrance gate, which I can adjust to make it as narrow enough for the wombats to get stuck in, and to make it wide enough for the keepers to get in. There was some problems with the enrichment items, as always. Depending on which animal you focus on, sometimes the enrichment items for one species don't work, sometimes they work for others, or they are shown as not working. I had the same problem with the swans and the red-crowned crane in my little Japanese area, where I thought they wouldn't be able to use them because they were shown as not reachable, not interactable, but apparently they are still interactable. At least the wombats interact with their enrichment items, despite them being shown as not accessible. So I'm hopeful that everything works out, that everything works as intended. It would be really cool, because that is really the charm of these 2 exhibits, that they coexist in the same space and that the kangaroos can get it in and out, giving them more space and creating awesome shared community animal vibes with the wombats, which is super, super cool. Speaking of, I never actually saw wombats in real life. I've been to 2 zoos that have wombats, these being, of course, Copenhagen and then the Wilhelma, or also called the Zoo of Stuttgart. Both of them feature wombats, and every time I was there were a no-show for me, probably due to the reason, or because of the reason that they are mostly nocturnal, diurnal, so they mostly sleep during the day, and then they hide obviously in their burrows and things like that. So every time I was there was a feeding there was a feeding happening in one of the exhibits. We were a bit too late, so we didn't saw them. So maybe one day I will be lucky enough to see them, because they are really, really awesome animals. They are the closest relative to the koala, which is super interesting. So wombats are essentially land koalas, or not land koalas, ground koalas. They are the closest living relative. And as all of you know already, their poop is square, which is super funny. That they produce cube-shaped poop, basically. The reason for that isn't always 100% clear. Most people or most scientists think it is because it helps the poop to stay in one area, which then serves as a way to mark their territory. I don't know if that is a complete real reason. This is the one I still remember. Maybe there are other reasons for that, but it is a super unique and cool thing, and it just further shows that Australia is a very weird place with very weird animals due to its isolation for millions of years. It is super cool. But yeah, we also of course include a burrow over here. I wanted to include 2, but it didn't really manage with how the space is laid out to make it usable for the animals. So we settled with 1 hidden in this little log over here, this fallen down tree branch, and then we of course need a lot of uneven terrain, because every wombat exhibit I have seen, either in real life or online, looks very rough. There's a lot of hills and valleys and ditches and things like that, because these animals burrow a lot. They burrow all the time basically, and shift the ground matter from one place to another. So I try to recreate it. That's also why we work with a lot of dirt here, and not that much plants. We will have some ground plants, like some grasses, but the rest of the plants usually get either destroyed or dug up or eaten because they eat them. So there is a lot of motion happening, or a lot of change happening in wombat enclosures. I compared the one from Copenhagen when it was open, because that is the one that you can see on Google Earth, to the time I was there, and it was a lot less green, a lot less flat. It was really interesting to see the change. It's really cool, and as I said, I tried to recreate it. We also have some rocks over here that stick to the ground. Later we will add some roots and some vines to create tree roots and plant roots that have been dug up, and then of course we have some grasses in some of the corners basically, but a lot of the exhibit will be just earth and sand and dirt basically, to create this look of it being dug up and reformed and things like that. But as I said, this is only the first part of this exhibit, of this plan. Basically, we're also working on the Zoo Lab today, and you saw from the intro cinematic that I know that I made interior for the Zoo Lab, or Zoo School. It's both basically. This will not be part of this speed build, so you will just, in a couple seconds, you will just see me building the general building of the Zoo Lab, which is very interesting building. Looks a bit more Nordic than anything, but I think it still fits the idea of this European zoo. But the whole interior of that building I have done post-recording session, basically because it would have taken too long to do everything. I think I needed another 2 hours or so to make the interior. And yeah, I just didn't want to include because it would have made the video that much longer. But that more on that in a second. But yeah, as I said, now adding all the roots here with the, I think these are the strangler fig vines from the tropical, no, the tropical from the South America pack, which are, if sunken down correctly, create a nice illusion of tree roots and plant roots in general. And then we also finish up the outside barrier of the wombat exhibit, which isn't the main viewing area for these animals, so that's why we use a little bit more heavy planting in this section. The main viewing area, of course, is inside, but if there are some people that don't want to go inside, because of course there are always people that are rightfully so afraid of animals or encountering animals up too close, and especially with kangaroos, that is a valid fear to have, and then they can still get some glimpses of these animals from here through these mesh barriers, which are not mainly for the wombats itself, but more so for the kangaroos, of course, because they can enter here. So we have to make this exhibit wombat proof, so we need a lot of concrete barriers around it, and we have to make it kangaroo proof, so we need to make the the fences a little bit higher so that they can't jump over them. But yeah, as I said, now we are moving on to the zoo lab building. I don't know that much about because we didn't went inside. I think it was open when we were there. Don't remember anymore. But of course, it is more catered towards kids and things like that. It's more catered toward kids and families. So we didn't really went in there. We don't have kids. We are just two adults in a zoo. So it wasn't really something that interested us, but I found some pictures online, especially the shape is easy to recreate because I know how the shape is. I saw it from the outside with these very interesting, I don't know what the shape it is. It curves and bends a little at sometimes, but the roof is very square. Gives a very interesting look. You saw it in the intro, and you will see it in the end here. But from I gathered, it says Zoo Lab on the outside. I guess it is some sort in the real zoo of Copenhagen. What I'm meaning here. I guess it is some sort of zoo school or teaching room. So basically, where you have some educational programs for kids, where you have some keepers or entertainers or people that are schooled in education, in zoo education, and then they have some programs with their kids where they teach them about animals and conservation and things like that. And also show them some reptiles, some insects, or things like small animals for them to get a first-hand experience. I don't know if this zoo lab is the same thing or it is something different, maybe more with hands-on experiments or things like that. There's also something, kids labs are sometimes where you can make your own experiments, which is very cool, your own physical experiments. Maybe it's something more like that in the real zoo. I went the route of a zoo school, so we have two rooms, separate rooms in this building. One being a general open information room where we have some more information about Australia and the animals in our zoo, not only the ones in this area, but also the wallabies and the koalas near the entrance of the zoo. So we have some information about that. We will also feature a small terrarium, most likely with Australian critter. It's empty. It's just a prop basically. And then we have a separate room where we have a TV screen. We have some info screens about conservation and threats to the natural world. And then we also have a lot of shares where you could have some classes. Also, these of course are also work. Also, if you are there with your school, your kindergarten, university, even maybe. And you have some classes about that, because I remember in my school, when I was back in school a lot of years ago, we had some trips to our local zoo. Not many, but there were some trips to our local zoo where we would have some presentation or some explaining do by some zoo workers about how a zoo works, what they do, and things like that. And there's also the place here to do that. It is located very centrally on this big plaza that you saw me build around in the last episode over the last months. It borders next to the Peccary exhibit, as well as the South America house and the Prairie Dog habitat. So this is a big central plaza with lots of trees. We will also add a food store, or I also will add a food stall at one point. I have already some prefabs basically that I made a long time ago, which I can place here. So this will be like another central hub, basically similar to the rotunda in the center of the zoo. But yeah, as you can see, this building is very dark. It uses a lot of dark wood. That is why I said it reminds me a lot of some other Scandinavian buildings, which often have next to their famous red and white buildings have these very dark plants, because they get darkened by the weather, and the weathering basically makes them a lot darker. I didn't really liked it, because in my headcanon for my zoo, also Edelwald here, my headcanon is that this area maybe formerly was maybe a Nordic area. So the whole Australia section was maybe a Nordic area. Maybe they had reindeer there, similar to what the Rhea Zoo of Schönbrunn has in this area. Maybe they had some other Nordic animals like snow owls or wolves or bears, things like that. And then they phased them out in favor of showcasing these Australian areas. And this building is an older building that was not taken down, because it still serves its purpose. It still serves as a school lab, or as a zoo lab, and so it feels a little bit out of place with the whole Australian area. But they didn't took it down, because why should you take down a totally fine building just because it doesn't fit the general vibes of the area? It is something real zoos do a lot of the time, that they have some old structures in new areas, because they're still very much functional, and that is the only reason. If it's still functional, why destroy it? It's just more money that in the end brings you maybe more theming, but serves the same purpose. So you can just save money. And I think that makes it also a little bit more realistic, that you have these mismatched areas in your zoo, these mismatched places in your zoo, where you see, okay, yeah, it's just what we humans would do if we have the space. We wouldn't build everything totally new if we don't have to. We just sometimes keep a lot of the stuff. And another big focus on this building, why we are now building it, is there is a lot of windows, not so much on the backside where the actual habitat is, probably to give the kangaroos also a little bit more privacy in some areas, apart from this kangaroo that is sitting inside the building here, because this was still open for them. There was no barrier. But it still has a lot of windows, so bringing in a lot of natural light, especially important for the classroom, which is the area where the kangaroo is sitting in here. And it also serves as our access point for our keepers to the exhibit. We will later hide the door, but also the real building has these access points to the exhibit in this building, or at least one of the access points. I mean, in the real zoo, the keeper can just go in through the normal visitor entrance to this walkthrough and care for the animals that way. In this game, we of course need a separate keeper entrance, otherwise it doesn't count as them being inside the exhibit, even though they can't go through it, they can't travel through it. I don't know, maybe, as I said, the sequel will address these problems. If a keeper can go into the exhibit, it should be counted as they are inside the exhibit, you know what I mean? And you don't need an extra access to be inside the exhibit. Anyway, I will now leave you with the last 6 minutes or so of this speed build, where we finish up the things with this building, one being of course the roof. And I forgot to mention that you saw me and you now see that the whole entire interior is already plastered out. Basically, I made all the plaster pieces for the walls. I scrapped that footage from the speed build, because it was something I do a lot of times on this channel, a lot of videos where I hide the outside wall with plaster pieces. And since it took I think 6 minutes of the speed build, I just took it out. If you want to see how I place plaster walls on other walls, and if there's something you want to see be my guest, there are, I think, a couple videos where I do that. So I just skip that part because it's something you see a lot of times in my videos. But anyway, as I said, I will now leave you to the rest of the people with me building the roof and then some of the final decorations outside and around this building. And then I will see you in the end, in the real-time part, where we look at the finished build in its totality. Alright, and here we are now in our real-time part, and before we look at our newest creation, we have two name suggestions to do today. First one coming from Kulufra, who asked if we could name one of the female capybaras Rosa after the flowers, and that we can surely do, this meaning we only have one female capybara left to be named. And then the second one comes from that Aussie bloke who asks, of course, as an Aussie, if we can name the male red kangaroo Roger after the iconic buff kangaroo. I cannot remember what he's talking about, who he's talking about. I think there was a very famous, big and muscular red kangaroo male, and his name was Roger, and of course that is a very fitting name for our very sleepy red kangaroo male over here. And talking about red kangaroos, we can now go into the mode here. We of course want to make this a little bit slower, and now we are here in our real-time part as we already were, and we can look at what we created today. And right from that we can see here that the kangaroos can access the wombat enclosure over here, and the wombats can't get out. The red kangaroos can and will get in and out if they want to. And if we follow the path, we of course come to the dedicated viewing gallery over here, where one of the wombats just entered the burrow. I don't even know if there's another wombat inside here. I think both of them are in the burrow at the moment. Yeah, both of them are in the burrow, so we can see them here. There are our two wombats with a little of concrete sticking through. I think I have to fix that if I can. But yeah, there they are, very cute. And this also jumps out of the first person view, which is unfortunate. But yeah, this is our exhibit for the wombats, which I think is very nice. It's very simple, as I said. A lot of dirt and stuff like that moved up and down and around because they burrow that much. You can also see them back there from the Tasmania bridge section, and this is the main viewing area where you also have the feeding spot over here. You have another enrichment spot over here, and then you have this keeper access ramp on this side, with a small gate where the keepers can get in, but the wombats can't get out. I really like it. It's, as I said, very simple. They share the same indoor area as the Tasmanian devils, but there's nothing in here as it is not visible for the guests. And yeah, here saw them how they access and enter this exhibit. But yeah, not only did we did that in this episode, we also did the Zoo Lab, which is now serves as a backdrop for the kangaroos. And you can already see some of the stuff inside here when you look through the windows. This is the school section, basically, where you have a lot of shares and some education about conservation. And then you have the screen where you just put down the trailer for Planet Zoo. And then, of course, some murals on the glass that maybe some kids painted, or it's just there to lighten up the mood a little bit, to make it a little bit more friendly. I think I could definitely add more animal decals and stuff like that on the walls. And if you go to the second space, okay, first let's look at it from the outside with the Zoo Lab sign, similar to how it is in Copenhagen, and with the animals. And you have another, enrichment station over here, enrichment station, education station for the kids. But if you enter through this side, you have a little desk over here where there would be an employee teaching you maybe something, or giving you some information. And then you have all this information about Australia with this wonderful artwork by, I think it was a real-life creator, a real-life artist who made these for the Australia pack. It's a shame they stopped with doing that, but I guess I get the work behind it and getting everything ready for when the DLC is ready. But it was really cool that we got these. Then, of course, we also have a map of Australia and show where our animals roughly come from, with Tasmania down here, and where the other animals come from. I think it would make sense to make some lines, basically, to show where they really are located. And then we have this little terrarium over here. There's nothing in here. It's just a prop, basically, that I made long ago for my wetland center over in Raven Creek, and I rescued them from there, and gave them a new home over here, which I think works pretty well. Probably some Australian animal in there. And then, of course, you can enter also the classroom through this door. Very simple. And then we have our plaza over here with the Prairie Dogs and the South America house, as well as the Peccaries on this side. But yeah, this is our Australian area done, basically. It is done. And now we can move on to the last bits and pieces of the zoo to finally finish it up. But all of that will be happening in the next episode. And until then, I wish you a great time. Stay safe and bye-bye, everyone.